My name is Rachel Wilson. I'm a first-year grad student here at CMU, and I was sexually assaulted on the evening of August 31st, 2016. Luckily, the cop that showed up to the ER when I went the next day to get the rape kit done was so nice and very understanding. Did everything he could to make me feel comfortable. But it's still, no matter how hard anybody tries to make it comfortable, it's not. You have to tell extremely intimate details about what happened, and you're doing this right before you get the exam done. I got a call in the spring, the following year, 2017, informing me that my rape kit finally came back. It had been, I think, 8 or 9 months. And at this time, I was back home because I couldn't go to school in the spring. And a detective here in Isabella County called to tell me that DNA was found. And that was the moment that every doubt in my head completely disappeared, and I knew what I had to do. So I came up to Mount Pleasant and gave my entire statement to Isabella County. And from that point on, I believe that was June, it was almost 10 or 11 months until the entire process was done. The detective at Isabella County did his investigation. The case was sent over to the prosecuting office and then was sent back to the detective's office for further investigation. Finally, when it did go back to the prosecuting office, and I was assigned a prosecutor, Larry King, at Isabella County, and from that point on, I was just working primarily with Larry King and with the victim advocate in the office. And they instilled a confidence in me that I could trust them, that I would be kept informed. But it became pretty apparent not long into the process that they really didn't have an obligation to keep me informed. In fact, I was called a witness. They don't really like to use the term victim. You're a witness, and you're called to the stand as a witness just like everybody else. So eventually, this individual was arraigned for 3 felonies, 2 counts of criminal sexual conduct in the 3rd degree, and another count of assault with intent to penetrate. And a preliminary hearing was scheduled in Isabella County in January of, I believe it was just 2018. I took the stand. I was on the stand for 2.5 hours, and Judge Chamberlain here in Isabella County decided to bind all 3 felony counts over to circuit court, which is basically them saying that there was enough evidence for them to believe that this can move forward either to a jury trial unless this individual would accept a plea bargain, which was not the case. So plea bargain was put on the table, and I even did my best to ask and be very upfront with Isabella County for them to inform me what they were thinking of for plea bargains, because, going from 3 felonies down to, I believe they went down to 1 felony, no jail time. That's a big jump, and I was not informed. They put it on the table and didn't tell me. but this individual didn't accept it. So eventually a jury trial was scheduled for May 7th. And approximately 3 weeks before I was set to take the stand at the jury trial and actually have the opportunity to have my say in court, I was told by Isabella County Prosecuting Office that they had made the decision to dismiss all charges. And that wasn't even the worst part. The worst part is that they blamed it on me. They told me they didn't believe that I would be able to handle it. That they were doing this for me, for my good. Which I think was the most hurtful thing that could have happened, that did happen in the entire process. Because I knew from day one that making the decision to come forward was going to be one of the hardest decisions of my life. But I've held my head up high the entire process, and to have someone say, well, we are going to rip the rug right out underneath you after all of the work and effort and time that you've put into this because of you. I can't even explain how that makes someone feel. But then I did come to find out that that was not the reason. After Rissa Scully, the head prosecutor of Isabella County, left the office, I believe she received a promotion, Robert Holmes took over as interim head prosecutor at Isabella County. And I was told that he was the one who made this decision and told my prosecutor that the case was done. So I requested a meeting with Robert Holmes to at least sit down and try to understand why. Why are 3 charges just dropped out of the blue? And I walked into the office. I had an advocate with me. And from the moment I sat down, it was, Miss Wilson, I heard you wanted to speak with me, so what do you have to say? And that just pretty much set the tone for the entire conversation. I was asked, why didn't I run? My entire story was completely invalidated. I was told, oh yeah, the bruises that there are pictures of from my exam, those weren't from what you would say force, but those bruises on my legs were simply the result of this individual using my thighs as leverage. It sort of makes me feel like someone in a position of power that is there to fight for you, to stand up for you, reduced you to not even a human. There was no compassion in that. There was no professionalism. It was cruel. People who have the courage to come forward and tell their stories, not only to stand up for themselves, but to stand up for other victims and even potential victims, they have the right to be believed. And not be talked to like almost like a child. It was condescending. I mean, basically what they wanted was for me to just accept their answer and go into the corner and shut my mouth. If someone comes forward to the police and it has nothing to do with a sexual assault, got bruises all over their face and blood running down their forehead. Do we honestly think that law enforcement would say, well, why didn't you run? You know, they didn't threaten your family. What's the matter? But that's the thing. Sexual assault isn't something that, you know, you have to be brutally beaten and left on the street corner. Most of the time it's somebody you know. And no one should ever have to fight this hard and this long just to have someone listen. Important. What I've learned this past year is that there is so much power in numbers. You know, while this was all going on, the Larry Nassar case was also going on and was on the news, and I actually met a few of the survivors from that story, and you know, if my story, if other girls, if there were any, had come forward, it's sad, but it's a reality that when there's more than one person that comes forward, for some reason, it's more believable. Because, I don't know, and even if people aren't victims, just to speak up for the cause in general. You know, I don't even see this as necessarily a women's movement. I mean, anybody can be sexually assaulted, and men are a big part of this too. I mean, the reason I came forward in the first place is because I have a younger sister at home. I am the oldest cousin of all girls except for one boy. And I thought, gosh, you know, I could not come forward and press charges, but what am I going to say to myself when one day my sister or one of my little cousins comes to me and says, Rachel, I was sexually assaulted. What am I supposed to say to them? It's going to be really, really hard. It's not going to be easy. At times you're going to think, why did I do this? But if nobody comes forward, then it is only going to stay that way. The only way that change is going to happen is if people come together, stand up for one another, and do what they know is right. The charges were dismissed. I did everything this past summer to file a civil lawsuit. Got really close to having a law firm take this, and it fell through. And this past August, on the 31st, I lost my shot at ever filing a lawsuit, because 2 years after the sexual assault, you lose your chance. So what I'm trying to do now is I guess move beyond that, because you know, that train is gone, it's past. But if I can get this out to people in our community, just to educate people on the hurdles that victims face still, and what we can all do about it, at least I'll be able to go to sleep at night knowing that I did everything I could and I didn't give up. This experience, I mean, it wasn't just one night for me. It has been every single day for over 2 years now. And there's been times when I've just been a complete mess. Many people that are watching this video that know me, they know what I'm talking about, you know? It's been a struggle. I've gone through depression, panic attacks, and all of this happened during my senior year, and I'm trying to graduate and get into graduate school, and now looking back, I realize that even though in the moments when I felt the weakest, I know that I was strong, and I still am. Crying and breaking down doesn't make you weak. I kept going. I graduated. And I started the graduate program. And hopefully in the next 2 years, I'll be a counselor. And this experience, as much as I wish that I wish it wouldn't have been a part of my college experience or my experience at all. I know that I'll be able to look someone in the eye and say, no, you're not a victim, you're a survivor. And that person that did this to you, they don't have control over you. And I just want people to know that this is something that so many people experience, and I never even really realized that. Since this happened to me, I've met so many survivors, and we've shared our stories and connected and found ways to cope together. Still doesn't take the pain away or the grief that I feel losing all that time and being violated in that way. But I know how much I'm capable of now. And for anybody that feels that they don't have it in them, you'd be shocked what you can do. I think that a lot of people that think that sexual assault doesn't happen on our campus, they may just not understand that sexual assault doesn't always look like the bad guy creeping behind the dumpster. Many of us see it all the time and you don't really recognize it. It can look like a girl that might be flirting with a guy and they go upstairs and that's the end of what you see. It's so well hidden and so ingrained in the partying culture and the drinking culture. I think a lot of us just forget about people that wake up the next morning alone and are dealing with this and no one talks about it. Some services that really helped me cope with the sexual assault were definitely SAPA. SAPA is the Sexual Aggression Peer Advocates that we have on CMU's campus. And they can be contacted 24/7 on the phone. You can have them meet up with you. There's even a chat if you don't feel comfortable talking on the phone. Another service that really has been and still continues to be a great resource for me is the counseling center. It was the place that I went the day after I was assaulted. I think that a lot of people that think that sexual assault doesn't happen on our campus, they may just not understand that sexual assault doesn't always look like the bad guy creeping behind the dumpster. Many of us see it all the time and you don't really recognize it. It can look like a girl that might be flirting with a guy and they go upstairs and that's the end of what you see. It's so well hidden and so ingrained in the partying culture and the drinking culture. I think a lot of us just forget about people that wake up the next morning alone and are dealing with this and no one talks about it. As much as I believe in speaking out, every single person who experiences this is different and all of our experiences are different. And, sometimes people don't necessarily have it in them at a certain time to speak up, and that I don't think that's anything to ever feel guilty about. I didn't even want to come forward. I was ashamed, I was humiliated. So I just think that, wherever someone is in this process, to just be kind to you, be kind to yourself, and remind yourself that you can only do what you can do in that moment. It doesn't mean that a year down the road or 2 years down the road you won't feel stronger. I've changed so much from the past 2 years. 2 years ago I would not have even considered sitting in front of a camera today. What I really wanted to do was just crawl under a rock. Yeah, I just don't want anybody to feel like I'm saying, speak out or, yeah. Just do the right thing. Do what you know is right and believe in yourself.